The Galactic Academy's training facility hummed with the usual cacophony of alien voices and mechanical whirs. Alexander Chen watched from across the sparring arena as Nora Martinez adjusted her protective gear, her hands trembling slightly. The Vraxian instructor, Korath, towered over her diminutive frame like a mountain of chitinous armor and predatory intent. Humans, Korath clicked, his mandibles spreading in what passed for a grin among his species. Always so fragile, so emotional. The word dripped with disdain, causing several alien cadets to chirp and growl in amusement. Alexander had seen this before. The Vraxians were apex predators from a high-gravity world where weakness meant death. They couldn't comprehend how humanity had earned its place among the Galactic Coalition, viewing human emotions as evolutionary failures rather than strengths. Nora stood barely 5 feet tall, her regulation training uniform hanging loose on her slight frame. She'd been the smallest cadet in their cohort since day one, earning sneers from species that measured worth in bone density and muscle mass. But Alexander knew better. He'd grown up on the same colony world as Nora, had watched her survive things that would break soldiers twice her size. "Begin combat assessment," Korath announced, stepping into the arena. His 3 hearts pumped ichor through veins that could withstand pressures that would liquefy most organic matter. Bone spurs protruded from his knuckles and his secondary arms flexed with barely contained violence. Nora took her stance, but Alexander could see the fear in her eyes. Not fear of pain. She'd endured worse during the colony raids, but fear of proving every alien in the facility right about human weakness. The first exchange was brutal. Korath moved with predatory grace, his primary arm striking while his secondary limbs attempted grappling maneuvers. Nora dodged desperately, her smaller size allowing her to slip away from attacks that would have shattered her bones. But she wasn't fighting back, merely surviving. "Fight, human!" Korath snarled, frustration building as his prey continued to evade. "Or admit your species has no place here." The watching crowd of aliens jeered, their various languages blending into a symphony of mockery. Alexander's jaw clenched as he recognized the Zelhari clicking that translated roughly to "prey thing," and the Hergnashi grunts that meant "meat weak." Korath's frustration boiled over. He feinted with his primary right, then drove his secondary arm forward in a brutal kidney shot. Nora gasped and stumbled, her face contorting in pain. She tried to regain her stance, but Korath was already moving, his massive form bearing down on her. "What are you gonna do, Cry?" Korath clicked mockingly, his mandibles spreading wider. "Will the little human weep? Will you show us how your kind surrenders?" And then, to Alexander's horror and the crowd's delight, tears began streaming down Nora's face. The jeering intensified. Aliens throughout the facility pointed appendages and made sounds of disgust. Even some of the human cadets looked away in embarrassment. This was it, the moment that would cement humanity's reputation as the galaxy's weaklings. But Alexander knew something they didn't. He'd seen those tears before. Nora's shoulders began to shake, not with fear but with rage. The tears weren't surrender. They were humanity's biological response to overwhelming emotion, a mechanism that cleared the mind and sharpened focus. Every human knew the terrible clarity that came with tears of fury. Korath moved in for what he assumed would be the finishing blow, his confidence absolute. Nora was crying, broken, defeated. She exploded into motion. Her first strike caught Korath's 3rd knee joint, hyperextending it with a wet crack. As he stumbled, she flowed upward, her elbow finding the nerve cluster beneath his secondary arm. The limb went limp, and Korath's confident expression shifted to confusion. But Nora wasn't done. 23 years of colony life had taught her that survival meant fighting through tears, through pain, through terror. The aliens had mistaken her emotional response for weakness, not understanding that human tears often preceded their most dangerous moments. She ducked under Korath's wild swing, tears still streaming, and drove her knee into his thoracic cavity. The instructor's exoskeleton, evolved to withstand his homeworld's crushing gravity, couldn't compensate for the precise application of force at its weakest point. Something cracked audibly. Korath wheezed, his confidence evaporating as Nora pressed her attack. She fought like her colony had taught her, dirty, desperate, and with the fury of someone who had lost everything and refused to lose again. Her small size became an advantage, letting her slip inside his guard and strike at joints, nerve clusters, and breathing passages. The arena fell silent except for the sound of impact and Korath's labored breathing. The mighty Varaxian instructor, apex predator of the galaxy's most feared warrior species, found himself being systematically dismantled by a crying human girl who barely reached his chest. Nora's final strike was almost casual, a palm thrust to Korath's sternum that sent him crashing to the arena floor, his breathing ragged and his secondary arms useless. She stood over him, tears still flowing freely, her small frame heaving with exertion. "The assessment is complete," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tears. "Do you yield?" Korath's mandibles clicked weakly in acknowledgement. The silence stretched until Alexander began to clap, the sound echoing through the facility. Slowly, other human cadets joined him, then some of the more thoughtful alien species who recognized skill when they saw it. Commander Thask, a grizzled Hergnashi veteran, approached the arena. "Cadet Martinez," he rumbled, "explain your combat strategy." Nora wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Sir, humans don't cry because we're weak. We cry because we're about to do something that requires every ounce of strength we possess." My tears weren't surrender, they were preparation. She looked around the facility, meeting the eyes of every alien present. "You see emotion as weakness because you've never needed it to survive. But humans learned long ago that sometimes the only way through hell is to feel every degree of heat and keep walking." Korath struggled to sit up, his respect evident despite his injuries. "I underestimated your species, human. This will not happen again?" Alexander smiled as Nora helped her former opponent to his feet. The galaxy was learning something humanity had always known, that their greatest strength wasn't the absence of emotion, but the courage to fight on despite feeling everything. In the end, they hadn't just broken Korath's ribs. They'd shattered a galaxy's misconceptions about what it meant to be human.